It's recording. Cool. So we're going to go through exercise 8C and 8D today. 8C and 8D follow what we call simple interest. Can I get a show of hands who know what simple interest is?
Pretty simple.
It is actually true. In comparison to versus, and I'm going to put on the side, the next one that you'll learn, which is in general with house loans and all that, they follow what we call a compound interest. And another way of thinking about it, in the real world, most banks will do simple interest for short-term loans. If you're doing like a long-term loan, which usually houses where it's over a 30-year mortgage, it's better for them to do a compound interest in general. Okay? Simple interest, like Ethan said, it is actually really simple, and I'll show you what I mean. I can illustrate it in a very simple concept that you can understand. Say, there's a car that you want to buy at the end of year 12. Okay? So I don't know how to draw cars, so I'm just going to do it this way. Okay? There's a car that you want to buy.
It's a better car than ours.
There's a car that you want to buy, but you currently only have $100 in your pocket. Okay? Now there are many banks out there. So remember, banks is a business. They have a collection of money, and they want your money. That's why you put it into a bank. When you put it in a bank, what they're doing is they're taking your money and they're using it, right? But they say, I take Matt's $5, and then I take Tom's $5. I now have $10. You have $0, right? But I have $10. Now, what's great about this? I can then take this $10 and I can give it to someone else, and I say, here, you can borrow. That's what the bank does. You can borrow my $10, but in return for every day that you haven't paid me back my $10, I'm going to get X amount of percentage off your back. So they might say, I'll take 50% back. Okay, so for every day that you don't pay my $10 back, you pay me 50% of that, right? So 50% of $10 is $5. So that means, say Mariam had my $10 and she wanted to buy lollies, right? After one day she hasn't paid my $10 back, I'm now like, okay, now you don't owe me $10 anymore. I'm going to take 50% of that, and you're going to owe me extra now. So you owe me $10 plus 50%. How much is that now? $15. So she owes me, after one day, she owes me now $15. And say she was good enough, she's like, all right, I've got my mom's money here, take it. She paid me back $15. Now I can go, hey Matt, you still have $5. And Tom, you still have $5. But now there's an extra $5 somewhere. What I can do to give you guys an incentive to stay with me as a bank, I'd say, you know what, you get an extra $1 for staying with me for an extra day. So you get $1, you get $1, right? Now you have 11, you have 11, you gained $1 doing nothing. All you did.
$10 now. I thought I had $5.
$6.
Oh, sorry, $6. And then you have $6.
Give me $11.
No, I forgot how much you gave me. So the point is, all I did was I managed your money. That's what a bank does. You give me the money, and I utilize that. You don't do anything, but the point is you give me the money is what I want. So banks, in general, how do they survive? They survive based on interest, right? So their idea or the main goal is to keep you in interest. They don't like it when you pay them back. They want you not to pay them back. That's why credit cards are great. You know, they have all these scam ideas like pay first and then pay later. Buy what you want first and then you can pay it later. It's the ultimate scheme. Because they know, on average, percentage-wise, at least in Australia, people are bad with money. So they're happy to buy and they're not really good at saving, and that racks up. They don't realize the percentage that adds on grows. And people can owe from, like a $500 dress at year 12 formal to owing about 30K. You read the books on it, people can owe up to 30K, and it builds up because of all this simple idea of interest in general. So, simple interest. There are two ways to earn interest, or there's actually many more. There are many more, but simple interest simplifies things very easily. This is how it works. You have $100. You've chosen a bank
I'm so dumb.
to go with, right? Just like Matt and Tom, they happen to choose me as a bank because I forced them to. They put in $100 into my bank. Now, I can then say, for every day, so I'm going to write here, for every day that you leave your money with me, I will give you 50% interest back on top. So if you put in $100 on day 0, so day, yeah, I know. It is. Good. So we're calculating here. It's good. So on day 0, you had $100. So money. Day 1. If hypothetically I was... If hypothetically on day 1 that I can offer you 50% interest, you will now still have your $100 plus 50% of your original amount. This is where it becomes simple in the idea. You see, you start off with $100. Day 1, you still have $100 plus 50%, which is what we call interest rate. So how much are you returning or how much you're getting back? If I say 50% of 100, which we know, I chose 50% because it's easy to work with. But 50% of 100 is $50. That means you now have a total of $150. Now the reason why this is called simple interest is because day 2, day 3, day 4, you're always going to be adding on $50. So it's predictable. You see, this would mean that after day 2, you will now get $200. After day 3, you get $250. After day 4, you get $300. This is exactly the same as what you've been doing at the beginning of this chapter. So remember we talked about sequences? Sequences starts off with a number, and then you look at how does it change. So for example, the sequence I gave you last session was 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And I asked you what was the pattern. You told me the pattern was add 2. Now, our pattern's quite similar. We're starting off with $100, then it becomes $150, then it becomes $200, then it becomes $250. In exercise 8C, listening, in exercise 8C, you're essentially adding $50 each time. And that's consistent. We're not doing times, we're adding. Now, the different examples that you're going to get, this is called simple interest because of the idea that it's consistent. It's plus 2, it's plus 2, it's plus 2, plus 2. This one is plus 50, plus 50, plus 50. What I'm going to be teaching you is more of a language. The concept is easy. Okay, the concept's easy. It's more of the language that you need to get your head around. They'll talk about growth, they'll talk about depreciation, but the formula for this idea is still straightforward. You see, you're starting off with 100 and you're adding 50s each time. Exercise 8C gets you to work with this. They give you a scenario and then you work out after 5 days, after 6 days, or after X amount of years, how much does it cost overall? Well, how much interest do you have to pay, or how much have you gained, right? Over here, this is where, if you understand what I'm saying, great. If you don't have to as well. This is more of a theoretical sense here. There has to be a shortcut to calculating this entire section, because I don't want to be doing 300 plus 50 to find the 5th day, and then do the same thing again, 350 plus 50 to find a 6th day. There has to be a quick way to getting all the way to the 99th day. So if I said, if you left your $100 in my account or my bank for 99 days, how much money would you get back? You You see, there has to be a way to calculate that. What you don't want to be doing is to sit on your calculator, enter 100, and say plus 50, and then press 50 99 times. There has to be a better way. So 8D, in exercise 8D, they give you the formula, but the formula you don't have to memorize because the logic to it makes a lot of sense. You can figure it out. Now, if you don't understand the theory to what I'm describing, then you can memorize the formula as well. That works too. Okay? But the idea here is here. See, what's the pattern? The beauty about simple interest is because there's a pattern to it. You start off with 100. On the first day, you added 150. On the second day, it does seem like you're adding 150, but you're not actually. You're actually adding 2 groups of 50s. Think about it. You start off 100. You have that extra 50 here, plus another 50. You're actually adding 2 50s. So if I write it again, here we go. We're going to write it on this side. On day 1, you added 0 groups of 50. On day 1, you added 1 group of 50. That's how you got 150 there, right? Day 2, you're actually starting off with 100 and you're adding 2 groups of 50. Can you see that? Because that's where your first 50 comes from. That's how you got 150. And then you add another 50. That means you've added 2 groups of 50. So the pattern here is quite easy to see. Day 3. Thank you. Thank you. 3 groups of 50 is for day 3. So that means day 4, it must be then 4 groups of 50. That's, if you don't understand the theory, it's okay. Usually I do like a substitution, but I'm scared to confuse you, so I'm just trying to describe it on a theoretical basis. Okay? So this is how they've come to the idea. If you actually want to calculate on the 99th day, how much would you actually gain from me? It would be $100. Sorry, I'll write it here. $100 plus 99 groups of 50. Because that's how many times you're going to add on 50. Because every day you're getting an extra $50. That only works for simple interest. Because it's always going to be 50. So, there must be a formula to work this out. In exercise 8D, they changed this formula so that this is your original amount plus, instead of 99, this is your nth groups of your interest, which they call D. Okay, so the formula, I'm just going to quickly go to 8D so you can see. It looks confusing, but really it's not. This right here is what they're trying to describe to you. They're trying to tell you that V0 is the first amount that you start off with, which is my $100, plus N, which is like your 99th term or the 100th term, multiplied to, what's R over 100? That's the rate. 50% is like 50 over 100. 6% is 6 over 100. That's what your rate is, times V0. Because when you say 50% of 100, that's the same thing as saying 50 over 100 times 100. That's how you got $50. When I asked you what's 50% of 100, you told me you're adding on $50. Okay, so this formula here, you don't have to memorize if you understand the theory to it, but that's what exercise 8D is. So what's the difference between 8C and 8D? 8C talks about simple interest. You keep adding on the numbers over and over, so day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. But then in 8D, there has to be a quicker way. So they introduce the rule. They tell you how to use the rule to find the simple interest over X amount of years. Okay? That's the theory. So 8C and 8D are the one. The only difference in it is that one's a rule, so you can calculate for future predictions, and in 8C, you work them manually. Every year you calculate for day 1, day 2, day 3. It takes X amount of times to calculate them. Okay? Now, notice there's a key word here. In your notes, I do want you to notice when you're talking about interest investments and you're gaining, notice it's a plus. Because that makes sense. You start off with a certain amount, V0. If you're gaining, obviously we're adding. But depreciation means that you're losing. So this could be losing money, or if you bought a laptop like I have, over time, it loses value. So when you lose, it's a minus. And that's the only thing you have to pay attention to, depending on the question. Are you gaining or are you losing? That tells the difference between addition or subtraction. Okay? Now let's do an example. I'm going to do an example just to consolidate your understanding. Here we go. Let's do example 13. This is from exercise 8D. 8C is pretty straightforward, very similar to 8B. Here we go. Let's have a look at this example together. And then I'll give you some time, so then I'll wrap it up in 20 minutes. And you've got time to work on 8C and 8D or anything before. Okay? Here we go. It says here, Amy invests $3,000. So the example I gave you before was $100. Now it's $3,000 in a simple interest investment. So that means you're putting it in and you're paying an interest at a rate of 6.5% per year, right? So if it's an investment, that means you're hoping to get money back, right? That's why you do investments. You do a market share investment, or you buy a house, property investment. You're doing something to hopefully get something back. In this case, you start off with V0 is $3,000. You want to write a rule to find the value of the investment after 10 years. Now you can do this manually, so in exercise 8C, this is how you would have done it. V0 is 3,000. V1, so after 1 year, you still have $3,000 plus 6.5% of your original amount. Now you can calculate that. They call that D. Okay, that's the letter they use. They call this D. So find the actual amount. So the one that I gave to you before was easier to calculate. I said 50% of 100, and you told me it was $50. This, you have to use your calculator to calculate. What is 6.5% of 3,000? So here we go. I'm going to use my calculator. I'm going to show you at a calculator. 6.5% just means 6.5 over 100. That's what 6.5 with a percent symbol just means out of 100. Of means times 3,000. So I'm doing 6.5 over 100 times 3,000. That gives me 195. So essentially, I now know I'm adding on $195 as my simple interest. That's the pattern. So if we were to do this manually, you would have $3,195 for year one. Year two, you would then say 3,195 plus 195 again. Here we go. So 3,000, add 195. I got my first answer. Year one. Year two, press enter again. Year three, press enter again. Year four, press enter again. Now you see this pattern takes too long. You don't want to be doing that over and over and over again. So there has to be a quicker way. So you can see, I've got my answers here. But what I want is a rule that can calculate 10 years without me taking too long to do this. So right here, this is the long method to do it. This is 8C. So if you're going through 8C, this is V0, V1, V2, V3, V4, and you need to go all the way till you get to V10. That's 8C. 8D says, skip that. Don't do this. Let's use a rule. So here we go. How do we write the rule?